The title of this video is Too Much Reading. Most of you will have heard of bucket lists. On the left, there's 30 things to do before you turn 30. Most of you wouldn't think reading 1,000 papers before you turn 30 would be something that you'd find on many bucket lists, and in fact, you don't. But in engineering and in other disciplines, there's way more papers than that. There is too much reading. And so the way that you read needs to be extremely selective. I'm going to give you some tips on how to do that. There was a prediction made some time ago that there would be less paper in the world. That's turned out to be completely incorrect. As I showed you before, there's an absolute mountain of paper. Millions of papers have been written. Lots of them in different disciplines. There's still staggering amounts of articles in engineering and within your disciplines of engineering in particular. If you look across the disciplines, you'll see that there are hundreds of disciplines, there are thousands of titles, and there's just a huge number, an absolutely dense number of disciplines. You cannot get across it all. You need to understand that you don't know everything. You can't solve every problem. And you need to be able to work with other people and ask the right questions in order to be able to get the job done. It's very important. Well, journals refer to other journals. There are millions of articles. There's indexes. There's all sorts of ways of searching through them. There's different languages. There's an unbelievable amount of information out there. And the move from paper to computers to the internet has led to an absolute explosion in journals. You're going to need to be able to manage that because that is not going to slow down during your lifetime. So what should you read? If there's so much to read, what should you read? Well, you want to read the best thing you can find. And how do you know what is the best thing you can find? Well, you can look at citation counts. You can find out how many times other people have used that information. You can find out how many times people have read articles. You can look at a whole lot of indexes. Impact factor, immediacy, half-life, eigenfactor, source normalized impact per paper. There's a huge number of ways of looking at things. And we're going to be looking at some of those metrics in detail in this course. The articles themselves are ranked with metrics. The journals as well are ranked with metrics. There's a whole lot of indicators for journals. All of these metrics give you some information, but they also have limitations. And we're going to be touching on some of those limitations because it's important to know about them. No metrics are perfect. I'm going to be talking about metrics in this course in several places. I'm going to be talking about metrics for writing. I'm also going to be talking about metrics for people, because using metrics for people creates problems of their own, and you need to understand some of the consequences that occur in industries when that happens. So how do we find a literature review? Well, jump into Google Scholar and throw in a field. It will give you a whole lot of titles for a whole lot of different journals. Doing a literature review is useful because it shows you the standard of writing that is expected, and it also shows you how to categorize. The title of this video is Writing is Hard. Ernest Hemingway said, "There's nothing to writing. All you do is sit down at a typewriter and bleed." Well, we don't have typewriters anymore, obviously, but there is a lot of blood, and you guys are going to experience the pain, if not now, at some point in your careers. I've tried to set up this course so it is as painless as possible, but there will be some pain, I promise you. Writing is hard, and it's a practice. The more you practice, the better you get. The better you get, the more you practice. It's a bit of a feedback loop. The less you do, the harder it gets. The harder it gets, the less you do. It's the way it works. I wish it were easier, but if you want to be good at it, you've got to do it all the time and find ways to do that. So why is writing so hard? Well, it demands a lot of focus. You need to be able to stop concentrating on the football, on the cricket, on the sport, on many things that intrude in life, to be able to just focus on the next word, the next sentence, the next paragraph, the next section. It requires stubbornness. It requires giving up. You have to stop at some point. You just can't keep writing forever. You cannot make any writing perfect. It requires courage in the sense that you've got to put yourself out there. People are going to criticize what you write. You have to take it on board, and you have to create that separation psychologically so that you can view that piece that you've just written as if it's been written by somebody else, that you're not connected to it. Because you need to be able to view it as a piece of writing, not as an extension of your identity. Otherwise you'll be hurt when people criticize you and your work. Writing also requires humility. You need to learn from other people. It's not something you're born with. It's something that requires practice, and it's something that requires feedback. Most engineers are very ordinary writers to begin with, and a lot of them are ordinary writers when they finish as well. Like I said, the way to progress in your career is to be one of the few that can write better than the rest. But everybody starts out as a beginner. In an ideal world, you would write an engineering article, you would submit it somewhere, and the process of review would be instantaneous. The journal would have a very high impact factor, and it will also have a low probability of it being rejected. Everything was accepted. You receive a nice email to say your paper's been accepted, congratulations. And the article would become useful, famous, and your work would be recognised. You wish. None of these things happen by chance. More than likely you will be rejected, several times in fact. The review process will be slow and frustrating, and you may not always get your writing published in a high impact factor engineering journal. Writing is hard. When you write an engineering paper, and when you read an engineering paper as well, you do not start at the beginning. Beginners should not start at the beginning. It takes a lot of experience to be able to start at the beginning. You should start on the next sentence, which is easiest. Oftentimes, an engineer will have built something. So you can start with the method. You can start talking about what you built. You can start talking about how you evaluated what you've built, whether it was any good. You can talk about how it relates to other things. So don't think that you need to start at the start of a paper to write a paper. Because writers don't start at the start. They start at whatever's easiest. The audience won't know what you wrote first. Readers will start at the start. They start at the title. If they like your title, if there's a good hook, they might keep going. But readers also won't necessarily read from cover to cover. But even if they did, they won't know where you started, so long as it makes sense. So you can start wherever you like. You've got to do that when you're a beginner, because it's too hard to start at the beginning. Trust me on this. Say you're stuck. Lots of people get writer's block. Take a break. Ask yourself, what am I trying to say and why is it important? Always have those questions with you. Talk to yourself. When you're going to take a break, tell your brain, when I get back from this break, I want you to figure out the next paragraph. I want to have it at my fingertips. Try it. It works for some people. But if you schedule regular time to practice, you'll find it gets easier over time. If it's just something you're going to do the night before, it's not going to work. This is writing at the next level. and it's hard, and you will get writer's block occasionally. You can push through it, but you've got to recognise it. Do not just get stuck. Some people don't know when to stop writing. This is the other alternative to writer's block. They think something, they write it down, they edit it, they polish it, and they keep going round and round and round and round. This happens to perfectionists. They set goals that are impossible to reach. They can't reach the goal and it paralyses them, so they procrastinate. So then they get closer and closer to the deadline, have a frenzy of activity at the last minute, and then they criticise themselves and the cycle begins again. Don't write last minute. You need to put it down. You need to let it marinate. Come back to it after a couple of days. Get someone else to read it. Okay? Do not do this alone. Writing is hard. You need help, especially when you're a beginner. You've got to talk to people. I've supervised a number of postgraduate students, and I can tell you that when I read a paper, I only give students feedback on a few sentences, because negative feedback hurts. And a lot of negative feedback hurts a lot. So I do not read the whole paper. I start at the start when I read, and I look at the title, and I look at the abstract. If they're alright, I'll continue on. But generally speaking, those foundational units give you a lot of information about where the paper's at. You can see the structure in papers over time, and I'm hoping to teach you how to see that structure in this course. It's going to take you time, but you're going to get it wrong, and you're only going to get a little bit of feedback on it, because negative feedback hurts. A piece of writing can be wrong in so many ways, but most individuals do it wrong in a unique way. So don't expect a lot of feedback on your writing. If you ask a question, you'll get a little bit. And if somebody asks you a question, don't sit down and go through them, the 20 things that they need to change. Give them your top 3 and move on. Because writing can be wrong in so many ways.